Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. Welcome to Age of the Mage podcast. This is episode 36, and it's another episode where we're continuing our discussion about angels and angelic technologies. As many of you know that have been following along, I introduced this segment about angels and the transmissions I'm receiving in episode 34. And I explained the whole background on why I wanted to dive into this and how it's a journey of exploration for me, and that I'm inviting you to be a part of. A lot of things. So if you want to go back, if you're just joining us and wondering what we're discussing and why we're doing it, I would suggest listening to episode 34. That gives you the overview of what we're doing with angels. And then this episode 35, I also suggest that you listen to, because that's the first part of the first transmission. And today we're going to cover the second part of the first angelic transmission. So in a nutshell, I'm kind of accessing, I'm willing to accept these downloads of information that are coming in regarding angels, because I have this personal interest in defining them better and understanding who they truly are, what the attributes they have are, and if we should contact them, if we should be interacting with them, because I want to make sure as I progress personally and maybe use more ceremonial and high magic techniques, I want to be assured I am contacting beings of light who have the very best interest and highest good intentions towards humanity, so that I feel confident these are the beings I'm working with. And this is what's prompting me to do a lot more research on who angels really are, what they really are. So bits and pieces are coming in. Obviously, it's difficult to get such a big, complex paradigm understood right away. We have limitations in our own language, which the beings I'm connecting with have explained. And this causes them to have to, give me the information in bits and pieces and in ways that they hope I can understand it. But it's really coming in on me in strong ways to keep at this. And as I have shared in episode 34 and 35, for some reason, I think I'm supposed to take this journey with you. And I think one of the reasons for that is that I haven't even really revealed this yet or in a podcast so much, but there are angelic forces contacting me, being very clear about the idea that they are reaching out to you. Some of you, as I understand it right now, are have angelic overlays, which we're going to get into more, of course, in the future. And you're highly connected to certain angels, and these angels are very anxious to reach you. Now, of course, I'm only one conduit. Of course, I know that. This work is so magnificent, and your destinies are so enlivened with your own energy and will come about in ways that you don't need me to introduce you to your angel. I understand that. But I guess there's some people who might not be aware. They may not be reaching out for their connection that they truly have and could be using. And I think that's who they want me to speak to, perhaps, is those of you that might feel a whisper, a light type of invitation or a tug. You're feeling tugs and you're feeling pulls at you to step into your, destinies, your spiritual and magical work, and maybe don't know where the connections are. And so I think that that's their purpose in having me share these things with you, is to reach out to those of you who might just go, wow, for some reason I'm really resonating to this particular message. Maybe it's for me. And that's what I'm thinking at this time. I also know that there's going to be some specific angels that come forward with messages for you. And so that's coming up too. But I wanted to lay the groundwork for those podcasts with more understanding about angels in general as I'm starting to see them through these transmissions. And so that's where we're at. That's the brief recap for those of you who haven't heard the other two podcasts. And we're going to go directly now into the middle of this first transmission. So, um, so in this first transmission, we have already been hearing about a warning that our language is not prepared enough to receive all the messages they would like to send because we don't have the words. We don't have the concepts linked to a language yet for those, but they're doing their best. So that was one message we've already covered. And then we've already talked about the idea of the middle kingdoms and the higher kingdoms. As the soul progresses in its journey, it moves through alternating states of absorbing knowledge and getting downloads and spiritual expansion, and dwelling in that kind of realm where it's just kind of learning and absorbing and just becoming filled with spiritual and magical knowledge, and then moving to the next stage where you experiment with that knowledge and you are able to apply it to practical things. And so they already told us that Earth is in a middle kingdom state, and a middle kingdom state is where it's physical enough to practice the knowledge. So that, in other words, the humans and the souls working through an Earth life and working with regards to Earth are in a state of being able to practice prior knowledge they already got. It's already sitting in your souls. It's already there. It's already in your minds. These methods towards manifestation, they're already with you. And this is our time to practice all those things. And so if I'm understanding the transmission right, this is our time to do that. And our next stage of evolution, not necessarily the fifth, the 5D world that is, some people are referring to, but it may be another whole stage altogether beyond that. But that next major shift into a different type of existence would put us in another downloading state where we would just absorb a whole new round of information. So our physicality, the state of Earth, allows us to utilize knowledge we've already accumulated. And that was where we left off last time. Just for the sake of refreshing our memories, I'll reread the last paragraph that I read, and then we'll move on. So it was about these different kinds of kingdoms. It said, high kingdoms are those dimensions that dispense knowledge and experience through the transference of light frequencies and vibrations of divine love. These kingdoms are leveled according to resonance, just as we have described in the case of the middle kingdoms. During a soul's stay in a high kingdom, it's not possible to replicate or create the acquired knowledge in any physical sense. It is a state of high awareness and expansion that will eventually lead to the soul's desire to put the new knowledge into practice. It's at that point that the soul will emerge into a new and higher middle kingdom where the soul can create according to the new expansion of knowledge. So we see this kind of progression from alternating of the soul through alternating states. You learn stuff, you absorb things, you get it, you receive these downloads, and you expand in your spiritual awakening and things like that. And then you move up a level where you can put all that knowledge to use, and you can work through actual creativity, actual, creations, actual practice of what you've learned. All right. So the next paragraph. We are attempting to explain this complex cosmology in language that you can understand. We do apologize now for any misconceptions that will occur as a result of the inadequacy of the level of understanding currently available to our communications with you. And with that warning, we shall continue the discussion at the current level of our shared language capabilities. So there's that warning again that they realize they can't quite get all this explained as accurately as they would like due to the limitations we have in our communications, but they're going to do their best. Now they're going to move forward, referring back to the Creator Alliance again. And this was covered earlier and in the previous podcast, number 35, where we seem to have these beings that are more advanced than us, both technology-wise and spiritually, and have really been our stewards, have largely been in charge of developing the human race, probably genetically and everything, through their creative abilities. And so this is referred to in this particular transmission as a creator alliance, and we have our own here on Earth. So as we move forward with these transmissions, that will become a little more clear on what that is. But I wanted to introduce it because we're coming up to that term again in this next paragraph. It says, the Creator Alliance that we have referred to is able to access higher spiritual information and is also able to share that information with their creations as they deem necessary. In most cases, Creator Alliances will always progress ahead of their creations and therefore will continue to act as stewards. There are circumstances where creators take different paths of evolution than their creations. And in these cases, the creations are accepted into appropriate soul families and begin to receive stewardship from new creator alliances. We shall discuss more about this at a later time if it's your wish to receive that information. So to make this easier to picture, whether I have it completely correct is probably, obviously, probably not. But what I envision is a humanoid species above us that has a very advanced knowledge, both spiritual and technological, and have been kind of put in charge of us. And so they would be considered our creator alliance. And as a creator alliance, it's most likely that they would stay steps ahead of us. They would keep progressing on their own path of evolution, but we would always be, some steps behind them so that they could continue to imbue us with knowledge at appropriate times and share things that we need to know as we're growing as a species and as Earth develops along with us, these types of things. They would keep sharing and downloading and helping us do that. But as a creator alliance, they would be a few steps ahead of us. Now, this paragraph would it seems that in some cases, a creator alliance decides to move off of their path. And I guess this has to do with free will. And while it's not stated here, I'm assuming that could even include a whole alliance of beings that just opts for going down a different path, maybe even a darker path or something. And in that case, the creations that they have been a steward over may bypass them. In other words, could be adopted into other creator alliances and other soul families. And so they could continue the progression that they want to be on. So this is another idea that they have dropped in that paragraph. And obviously there's a lot more information we need to round that idea out. So I think what they're trying to do too is give us some imagery and some ways that we can kind of comprehend how these things work, and obviously they're simplified so we can understand the generalities about it. And I'm well aware that it's far more complex than it's probably sounding here, but it does start us on a path of exploration and thinking about these things in maybe a different way than we have been. So anyway, we'll go back to the transmission, and they're going to refer now to the actual names of the angels. And I had this concern about calling these names and inviting them into my etheric field. Once again, I wanted to make sure I was calling on names of the highest vibration and with the best intentions and the highest and best wishes for humans and myself personally and all of us collectively. And so I think they're going to address this idea of what happens when I'm uttering these names. And those of you who also use angelic calls in your magic or even prayer work, what this actually is doing is where we're going to go next. All right, so again, I'm reading. It says, the names that you associate with the angels are packages of soul technologies that come from your Creator Alliance and are based on their spiritual knowledge of the high kingdom that merges closest with their current dimension. The sounds used in these names are tones that are capable of opening up lines of communication between your dimension and those of higher frequencies. In some cases, members of the Creator Alliance have assumed the name as one of their own. In other cases, the names are revealed as symbolic references to divine energies. Let us answer your question pertaining to the usage of the quote calls and audible uttering of these names. If a human chooses to call upon an angel through intoning the corresponding name, that person will be inviting an energetic portal to open. This portal is a conduit to the energy, function, and in some cases, the actual entity that corresponds to the sounds uttered by using the name. It is not guaranteed that the portal will be opened or received on the other end, but the request to open such a portal is heard, as it is an invocation that follows the quote, law of sounds from the higher kingdoms. In the case that the sounds do reach an actual entity, it may be an entity, let's read that sentence one more time. In the case that the sounds do reach an actual entity, it may be an entity representing the divine truth of the sounds and not the, quote, original sound bearer of the highest kingdom, where all divine sound technologies originate. In other words, in the case of the earth human family, the sounds may reach the, quote, ears of the being who has claimed the function, name, and calling as part of a service in their Creator Alliance, as part of their service in the Creator Alliance. All right, so this tells me that calling the angelic names, that those are not accidental tones. Those have been given to us through inspiration and handed down through time as actual sound technologies that we can use. And it would seem they're saying here that when we utilize a name, when we put certain sounds together, we're opening up a pathway or a portal to the being or the one representing the attributes that those sounds go with. And so that's what I believe they're saying here. And they are careful to say that it might reach the very highest level, the actual, what they refer to as a sound bearer, an original sound bearer. I assume maybe that's someone who has created the sounds, or, it's the archetype of those and the symbolism and all the attributes of the sounds have originated there. And they say that we might reach all the way to that original sound bearer, but in other cases, the portal would open up to the extent that we're reaching into our own Creator Alliance, those that are called to serve as representatives of that sound bearer. And so that's how I'm interpreting that so far. They go on. There are specific cases which add complex elements to this explanation. However, we sense your weakening connection, and we say that this explanation will serve you best at this time. So I was well into this transmission at this point. And as I explained in earlier podcasts, I start to fade sometimes. I kind of start losing the best and clearest connection. And this is what they seem to be telling me right here, is that the connection quality is changing. All right, they continue. In general, should you choose to utter an angelic name, you will initiate contact through a stream of corresponding energy to one who can choose to hear and answer your call. The sound bearers of the highest kingdom resonate to each sound under the jurisdiction of their creation, and all is contained in the divine source. If you manage to hold the energy of a strong intention when you utter the sounds associated with a particular angel, you will be tapping into the stream of energy that emanates from the original sound bearer, and thus you will activate your intention in your physical domain. Now they conclude by saying, this information will suffice for this session. We are willing to share much more information about angels in future communications. But it's clear that your energy is waning and our communication channels are weakening. We retire from this session and leave you with our blessings. We will await your return. And so that first transmission ends. And it gave me a lot to think about, maybe for you too, and you might have ideas already coming to you that are inspired and can add to these ideas. But I will say that I will be following up in the next podcast with the newest transmission, and it shines some light on some of this and expands on some of these issues. And so I think we're getting into a zone now where I'm starting to feel more comfortable myself about contacting certain angels. And as we move through that next transmission, perhaps you'll see why I feel that way. I have just not been content to assume the whole angel paradigm is safe to work with. And I know that might sound strange to some of you. I do think that many beings that we sometimes refer to as angels are different types of beings, perhaps, or we may find, as I go through more downloads and transmissions, that they are indeed angels, and they are representations of angels in different ways. But for me, I wanted to get clarity, more and more clarity on this before I actually spent too much time saying these names out loud, because words and sounds are so very powerful. The high magicians of this world understand this completely. And that's why I wanted to make sure I was in alignment with using these sounds and bringing that energy into my sphere. And so I'm hoping that some of this information will reach those of you who might have similar concerns or even just curiosity at this point. Once again, I know that we are leading to some podcasts in the future where a specific angel is trying to share a message with you. And that's coming. That's coming. But I want to lay the foundation first so that we all understand how and I perceive who I'm getting information from and why I feel I'm getting that, so that when I do share a message, it's better understood. The foundations of the message are understood by you, and it's just a part of the process that for me is really important to share with you. So thank you once again for being here, and we will continue our journey with angelic technology exploration when we continue next time. But I will say goodbye for now. Thank you.